I have, but
okay, I'm recording.
Okay, before we obviously do this shir, Kevin brought to my attention Rabbi Avraham Tanzer passed away last night. Now, for those of you that don't know, Arthur, I just want to give you an indication of who he is. Maybe even Gavin doesn't know. You know, I went to Menorah Primary, which is the primary school of Yeshiva College. And I can tell you something, Rabbi Tanzer, there were tens of thousands of people that went through Yeshiva College over the years and through the shul, and there wasn't anything in the Jewish community. You had two choices, basically. You had Chabad, which was Torah Academy, and you had Yeshiva College. I mean, King David was always not a criticism of King David. It was always a Jewish school, but it wasn't a Torah emphasis school. And Yeshiva College, where Dan went, my friend Daniel Brody, Rabbi Daniel Brody went, and many people went there, decided that Yeshiva College, it was one of the best balanced schools I've ever been to. You know, I'm not saying anything against Haredi at all, but most of the people that went to Yeshiva College, I mean, my mom used to wear jeans. She never wore a shaitel. And if it had been a very judgmental school, there would no ways that my secular parents could have sent my brother and I there that turned out frum. And they accepted everybody. They accepted people from a frum background. Rabbi Tanzer accepted me from a secular background. And I remember Mrs. Oaken, my teacher, said to me once, we were asking what our favorite dishes were, and I said prawns. And she said, no, you can't say that out loud. It's not something that the rest of the children, you'll have a bad influence. I said, but they're delicious when you crack the cockroaches over the head and you deep fry them in oil. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I came from a very secular background, and Rabbi Tanzer was very welcoming. Everything that he approached in the school was one of love and balance and discipline, where most of the people at the school had a wonderful balance between working and an appreciation and the love of Torah, a love for the land of Eretz Yisrael. It was a Dati school, which to me always felt like more of a balance than a Haredi school.
Was he the headmaster at one time?
Pardon?
He started the school.
He started. There was nothing in the Jewish world.
No, but doesn't matter. Was he the headmaster though?
He could have been.
He was the Rosh Yeshiva. I don't know if it's.
I saw I saw that today. That he was the Rosh Yeshiva. So there was actually a yeshiva there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Look.
Yeshiva Gedolah started there.
Yeshiva Gedolah started there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can tell you something.
Damon?
The influence that he had of people through that school. Yaakov?
He was a Talmud Chacham. I think he went through Shas at least 7 times. And his sons are big Talmud Chacham here in Israel.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Rav Dov, Rav Dov Tanzer and Rav Baruch.
Rav Dov Tanzer does it once a year.
Well, that's his son.
That's just once a year. It's unbelievable.
No, he comes from he went to the Tel Yeshiva in Cleveland. Rav Gifta, he learned with Rav Gifta, with one of the giants of the Torah world.
I don't know.
It's an absolute giant. No. But balanced and like my parents are upset.
How old was he? I think
about 84, 85.
Really, yeah.
But a giant in Torah and as a human being, not just in Torah, as a human being as well. And as an educator, Damon says...
You told me, both of you have told me. I know of him. I've never met him. I know his son, Dovi, because I used to go every year. I don't think they'll have it this year because we were on top of each other. It's a very small sukkah, or they'll be very selective who they invite. But Dovi Tanzer used to come every year.
Yeah.
And unbelievable. I mean, if that's a representation of his dad.
And his son and other brother in Israel also.
I mean, his son's impressive.
A kollel, right? Yeah.
So that's another one that's impressive.
Illustrious people here, Gavin. These are like giants. You can't... I had my balmy, my brother did. He married me, he married my brother, and my brother. Just always a smile, never judgmental. Obviously, he wanted people to be frum. Obviously, they wanted that at Damon. But they did it with love and with to love. Show that...
Yes. To Rabbi Avraham Tanzer.
Is that his first name?
Avraham. Yeah. All right. So, Baruch Atah, Adonai Elohim melech haolam, Asher Kedishan b'mitzvotah v'tzivanu l'suk b'divrei Torah. Varevna Adonai Eloheinu it divrei Toratcha b'finu v'yivcha Beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzeinu v'tzeitze. Amcha Beit Yisrael kulanu yodeh shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah le'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai le'en melech l'mashebach habanu mikol amim v'natan nanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notenu Torah.
Amen.
Okay, so let's get started quickly. Now, where we ended yesterday on the Gemara was we were discussing this issue that Rav Ashi wanted to know, according to Sumchus, is one's impetus. The impetus is a Latin word for one's force. Let's just call it something simple. Is the force of its force treated like the direct force? Meaning, if a bucket came down and smashed, and that bucket was attached to a rope, the hens pecked at the rope, the bucket smashed, then a shard of that bucket hit another bucket. That's a force of a force, because it's Soros, technically, if you consider the bucket side of where it lands and smashes, but if you're considering it from the rope side, it's full payment muad, because it's from the direct chicken movement. So we're saying, do we work out the smash of the bucket from the point at which the issue occurred, or when the vessel originally smashed? And then basically we were talking about, we need to see if this brisa is authored by Sumchus, because if it's authored by Sumchus, we have a problem. Because if he rules it's full payment for Soros, so if it's full payment for Soros and it's full payment for Regel, Muad, there's no difference. You're still paying, so it doesn't make a difference. If it's authored by the rabbis, we can see if it's the beginning of the process that's worked out or the end. Because if it's by the rabbis, and we can see this, then we know when it says the bucket you pay full payment, we know then clearly it's the same as Rava's teacher, and it's at the beginning of the process. So we don't know. So how we ended off was Rav Ashi was asking on Sumchus, does he consider a secondary force or the impetus of the impetus, meaning as the bucket smashed from the rope, which was a case of cutting rope or pecking at rope, bucket force, first case of Soros, that shard hits another bucket, second force of Soros. In that particular case, is it like is the force of the force equivalent to a direct force? In other words, is a secondary impetus or secondary force seen as half payment damages to Sumchus? Does he differentiate between a force of an animal, a direct force, or a secondary force? In other words, maybe he sees that there is a law from Moshe, from Har Sinai, this particular law, but he sees it as a secondary force as opposed to a primary force. And at the end of the day, Rav Ashi says there's no way really to deduce this. We don't have enough information. And then he says that this is according to the rabbis. We actually can view this price according to the rabbis. And therefore, Rav Ashi's statement is that we work it out from the beginning of the process, the catalyst. Why? Because if it says, like the Brisa says, that it's a full payment damages, okay, for the bucket, we then know that it's considered as though the hens damaging it directly means that it's the start of the process. So it's trying to answer Rabba's question. But then Rav Bibi turns around and says, no, he doesn't agree with Rav Ashi. He says you can't come to the assumption it's the first part of the process. Why? Because he wants to say the reason that the bucket is muad wasn't from the rope. It's that as a heavy chicken was on the bucket and kept trying to peck at the rope, the bucket was swaying backwards and forwards, and the hen's body was pressing against it, and almost in a seesaw motion, eventually it clapped, and the pot plant or the bucket or whatever it is actually broke under the chicken's weight and the continual motion of the chicken pecking. So he wants to say the reason why you can't say it's the beginning of the process is it's not like there was no force on the bucket at all, and it was just the rope being cut almost, or pegged, where that was a case where you could see it's either choros, if it's worked out from the final smashing point, or the beginning stages is the hen pecking causing it. So he said, no, this is the weight of the chicken. So we can't deduce it from this particular argument. Now, we're going on to a different section of the Brisa, and this section of the Brisa, where's Arthur? I don't know where Arthur is.
I'm here. I'm just doing something.
Okay, I'm watching you. Okay. So
taking some medicine.
Okay, so what it's saying is here now is that Rava has another inquiry. And I'll tell you where this inquiry happened. Do you remember in the third daf, there was a discussion with Rav Papa and Rava. Rav Papa said that Rav Papa was the first person to mention about the fact that are the toldos, the subcategories, the same as the Av, the primary category. In other words, is it also muad? Just like you'd pay full damages for the primary category, would you pay the same full damages for the subcategory? And in every case, we said yes, whether it's an ox, a pit, a fire, or man, or shane, or regal, etc. Now, let's not confuse this with the case of tam and muad. Let me tell you why. Because goring is a primary category of ox. So if, even as the primary category, the Av of ox, it did it once, or should we say 3 times or less, you still pay half damages from the body of the animal. So there's no way there that you pay less with the Av than you do with the tordos. In other words, what is a tordos of Keren? It's when the animal may be bit in temper, as opposed to goring with the tools. And the biting in temper would be considered a tordos, of which they also have a case of tam and muad, the same as with the Av, where the animal gores directly with Keren. You have a case of tam and muad, depending on how many times the animal did it. Therefore, there's no difference, even in the case of Keren, where the tordos is less stringent than the Av, or in fact, where it's more stringent. It's the same. There was only one exception Rav Papa brought, and that was in the case of the third daf with regards to choros, which was a special law from Moshe at Har Sinai that says it's half payment damages from choice property. That's what Rav Papa comes to teach. And Rava wasn't sure. Rava wasn't sure either if it's from choice property or the body of the animal. Rav Papa was sure. So the Gemara asks Rava, well, if you determine that it could be from the body of the animal, why don't you label it under Keren instead of regal? And he said, no, it's regal because it's in the way that the animal naturally moves or gallops. The horse, for example, can kick up stones. And the animal's rationale, the reason or the operating principles is that it's done in the normal movement of the animal. And therefore, we learn it's regal because it's exempt in the public domain for choros. Does that make sense? He just wasn't sure if you pay from the body of the animal or choice property. So Rava has 2 questions. A, if this is the case with the utensil, firstly, where we were previously, is it the starting point where it's considered muad from the animal's foot setting this process in motion with the impetus of its horse, or at the point at which it smashes? Then it would be choros. That's the first question. Second part of the question is as follows, is that if we say in the case of choros, just let's say a standard case where the animal kicks up a stone, okay? Let's just forget about utensils now, just when an animal kicks up a stone, for example. Do we work out that it's paid from the body of the damaging animal, or if it's paid from choice property, the half payment? So this is how the Gemara basically goes in terms of concept. So another inquiry, Rav inquired regarding the half damages that one must pay for what his animal damages through choros. Does he pay only from the body of the animal, or does he pay even from choice property? Rava explains the two sides of his inquiry. Does he pay only from the body of the animal, because we do not find any case that half damages in which one pays from choice property? Or perhaps he pays from choice property because we do not find any case of one's animal causing in the normal way that an animal walks and moves, in which one pays only from the body of the animal. So what is it trying to say? All right, so we're going to analyze.
Sorry, but I'm in a Zoom meeting at the moment. I'll try to talk to you later. Okay.
Okay, so Kev, let me just repeat what I was saying here.
Sorry, man. I just got a call there. Yeah.
Not a problem. So
Sorry.
if you argue, Rava says you can work it out one of two ways. If you, Rava's saying, regarding the half damages that one must pay for his animal, damages through tsoros, does he pay from the body of the animal, or does he pay from choice property? Those are your two choices. Now, let me tell you two schools of thought that he says. You can either pay from the body of the animal because we do not find any case of half damages in which one pays from choice property. Can you guys give me an example?
Half damages when you pay from choice property, or you don't.
Well, you don't.
We don't pay from choice property. Yeah, that's normal when in Keren.
Correct. So what he's saying is, listen, up until now, because this question is relevant to the point where we are at the daf. So where we learned up to this 17th daf, the only time we learned about half payment damages in detail was a case of Keren. And we said for time damages, for a tame ox, there are two leniencies. Half payment, and then the second leniency is from the body of the animal. So it says we've never learned a case so far where you're dealing with half payment damages that don't also come with the other leniency of paying from the body of the animal. We haven't learned anything like that so far. So that's the one school of thought. The other school of thought is maybe you think it's from choice property because Shoros is a case of regal. Why is it a case of regal? Again, exemption in the public domain. Number two, the animal gallops. This is not out of temper. This is when an animal gallops and kicks up a stone. And therefore, every case of regal that we've learned so far is paid from choice property in the private domain. Therefore, which way is it? Do we see it according to regal, or do we see this leniency like we see with the half payment damages that we learned in previous cases? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
So it actually is good from a logical point of view. Now the Gemara comes to resolve Rava's inquiry. Shan Keva, you're up, but
I'm fine.
Come learn a proof from the brisa cited above. Hopping is not considered muad for a chicken. Some say, however, this is considered muad. The Gemara analyzes this brisa. Can you think that the brisa refers to simple hopping? Certainly all must agree that normal for a chicken to hop. So what they're saying is a chicken moves around by either walking or hopping, depending on how energized or excited it is. And it's normal for an animal to walk in this way. So this would be a standard case of regal if it broke something under the force of its body or its feet. So we could say, rather, must it not be that the brisa refers to where the chicken was hopping and it sent pebbles flying into a utensil, breaking it? And they, the Tanoim of this brisa, argue about the following. The one who says it is not muad, in other words, the Tana Kamma, holds that one pays for tsoros only from the body of the animal. Whereas one who says it is muad, some say, holds that one pays for tsoros even from choice property. So what it's saying is here, right, this is not where a chicken's hopping and lands on an object. It's where it sent pebbles flying into a utensil. And when some of the Tanaim refer to it as muad, it's implying muad, meaning it's talking about muad in the sense that you pay from choice property. Why? Because choice property is always known as a muad payment. Let's look at a case for a bore, for a pit. Let's look at a case for harve, fire, man. Let's look at a case for shane and regal. This is muad from the outset. And from there, you pay from choice property. So when it's referring to choice property, the Brisa is saying those rabbis that say that for tzoros, the chicken is muad, it's referring to not that you don't pay half payment damages, but that the second leniency doesn't apply and that you're actually paying from choice property. Then you've got the other argument that says, no, the chicken is not muad, meaning apart from paying for tzoros, we're saying that maybe when we say not muad, the second leniency applies, like with tam and muad for keren, meaning you also pay from the leniency of the body of the animal. And why is that a leniency? Is because it's less, meaning it's half payment to the maximum amount of the body of the damaging animal, which means if it's a puny little animal, you don't even pay half damages. Just for anybody listening in, as an example, if your ox hits my ox and causes 300 zuz worth of damage, right? And then if it was a muad ox, you'd owe me 300 zuz. Say it was a tam ox and you only owe me half of that, which is 150 zuz. But your ox was a puny little ox and it was worth only 80 zuz. You wouldn't have to pay the 150. You'd only have to pay the weight of your damaging ox, which is to the capacity of 80. Are you with me in terms of how the second leniency would work? Gus?
Yeah. Can I just mention something? With Keren and with Moad and with Tam, with half damages, that's only 3 times. Whereby I'm just saying there's a distinction here slightly. Whereby with Tzoros, it's indefinite. It's not 3 times. You can keep doing it. So,
good point.
I don't think that. I'm just saying that the leniency, in my opinion, shouldn't apply. The additional leniency of the body based on that.
Good.
I don't know if I'm right.
Good point. So Gavin's making. Do you hear what Gavin's saying? It's a very good point. He's saying that the reason for the leniency of the body of the animal, not just the half payment, is because it was a completely different reason why we were lenient.
Give me a second. You want to go through?
What?
No, Nadine's asked me a question, sorry.
Sure, no problem. We know you want to survive at the end of the tour.
I won't be long. But another 20 minutes. Ciao, bye.
Okay. So we don't want Arthur to be gored, and you must remain. So Gavin's reason to me makes a lot of sense. Why does Gavin's reason make sense? Because Gavin is saying, listen, they're not derived at the same hypotheses. The reason for the leniency in the case of a tam and a muad with Keren is because the animal's actually tame. There was a whole discussion in the previous brisa if you should even pay anything at all for a tame animal. Do you know what I'm saying? Just hang on a second. Let me call you back. I'm just in a meeting. Gavin, I think your logic is spot on. The reason is that they derived at 2 completely different senses of reasoning. So why would it be that in this case, in other words, again, the leniency was the special rule for Tzoros from Moshe Har Sinai. Okay? The reason for the leniency with the tam, both in terms of half payment and the body of the animal, is because the animal's actually tame. They're 2 different things. Why would you think it's from the body of the animal? So Rabbi's actually saying, Gavin might be right or he might be wrong. We're not sure. We need to find out. Now, by the way, it's not that Rabbi didn't know. We learned from Rabbi Rankom that the rabbis did know. They're teaching us. And they're making this an explorative argument. Does that make sense? So at least Kevin, at least your way. So when we said that it's possible that this is what the Bryce is referring to as muad versus not muad, in terms of the second leniency of body of the animal versus choice property, it's saying this particular Bryce is not talking about it. The Gemara rejects this proof. No, it might be that the Tanaim of this Bryce are arguing the matter of dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. Okay? Meaning that, listen, what makes you interpret this Bryce as being muad, referring to choice property, versus not muad, in other words, referring to the body of an animal? That's interpretive. What we're saying here is this could be a case of when we say muad for tsororos, according to Sumchus, and not muad for tsororos, meaning half payment, according to the rabbis. So there's no ways that you can just use an interpretive method to derive this principle from the Bryce. Everybody with me so far?
Yep.
Okay, good. So the Gemara seeks a different proof. Come learn a proof from the following Mishnah. And this Mishnah is in 21b, which we're going to deal with at a later stage. If a dog took a biscuit off the coals on which it was baking, and it went to a stack of grain sheaves, where it ate the biscuit and set fire to the stack. Okay? So we're talking about a case where, for example, that in the old days they used to bake cookies on coals. So the dog saw his opportunity. People went in to get some drinks, take out the lounge furniture, and grabbed a biscuit. And as the dog was walking back, it was hot. And the dog dropped it, and he dropped it on something that was flammable, meaning there was a little piece of coal underneath. So whether it was on a braai and the dog brought it in and dropped it on the sofa, and it burnt the sofa, or it burnt some grain, and the grain caught fire. We're talking about a little piece of coal that, as the dog was pulling it off, stuck to the bottom of the biscuit. Okay, these are not flammable biscuits. It meant that this coal had stuck to dough. So we're saying for the biscuit, the dog owner pays full damages, and for the stack that caught on fire, the stack of the sheaves of grain, he pays half damages. Now, guys, why do you think he pays full damages for the biscuit, the dog's owner?
Because the biscuit. Oh, sorry, Gavin.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
The biscuit. Okay, I'm taking a chance here, a long shot. The biscuit. Where was this, in a public domain or in a private domain? First of all,
Excellent question.
Because if it's in a private domain, then the dog will be liable for the biscuit. If the dog didn't belong to the owner, maybe that's why. Full damages, I think.
Absolutely. So Kevin is absolutely correct. We're talking about if it was done in the private domain, whereas, like people would have congregate and have communal meals together where your dog would follow you, and you'd have an open braai area, and the dog quickly took the biscuit and put it to your neighbor's stack of grain. Okay? So it's very good. Kevin says right, that it wasn't a private domain. That's why you pay. And why would you pay? Because the dog ate the biscuit, and therefore that's a category of when a dog eats. What is that?
Karen. Now what's
no, physical gratification.
No, what's that called again? Shane.
Exactly. Shane, that's the tooth. So for Shane in the private domain, you pay full damages more. So that's why the dog's owner pays full damages for the biscuit the dog stole, and he pays half damages for the stack of grain that was set alight. Okay? And this is so what is the reason he pays only half for the stack? Is it not because it's a case of churros? What are we talking about here? Is that the dog took its force and it went from point A with the biscuit to point B. A force, or the impetus, isn't just about kicking the biscuit up. A classic case of rego is when it crushes the biscuit with its foot. A classic case of churros is when it kicks it or it moves it with its body. That's a force. That's an impetus. So if a dog takes a biscuit from point A to point B, that's Soros. It's moving the biscuit. So it's saying that the dog pays half damages for Soros. But the rest of this Bryce is interesting. It said, yet the Bryce elaborates and states regarding this Mishnah, half the damages from the body of the dog. So what does it imply automatically? That it would seem here, Gavin, from the Bryce, that if it's Soros where the dog moves the biscuit from point A to point B, that the dog pays half damages from the body of the dog for Soros.
Okay, but I have a slight problem. I agree with you. That's very interesting. But I've got a problem. Kevin pointed out a very good point that this is probably in the public domain.
No, he said it's in the private domain.
Private domain. So Soros
No.
Soros doesn't apply in the.
No.
It applies in the public domain.
No, it's exempt in the public domain. It only applies in the private domain.
Oh, sorry, that's right.
Like regular.
Okay, no, it's exempt. Okay, it's fine.
No, but at least you're awake. At least you're thinking.
No, I'm getting mixed up. It's fine. Thank you for the correction.
No, but Gavin's thinking, and I'm happy. So Shane and Regal, exempt in the public domain. Why? Because they share one pasuk. If you send forth your animal and it eats in the field of another, so that pasuk is coming to include Shane and Regal in the field of another, meaning if you obligated in the field of another, you exempt in the public domain. So Gavin, you're thinking. This, as Kevin said, is in the private domain. So no, Gavin's thinking, I'm happy. So it states regarding this Mishnah, half the damages from the body of the dog. So it would appear to seem that this is a case of Soros. That with Soros, it would seem that you pay from the body of the animal so far.
Yeah,
okay. Now we're going to end off on this note here. Tomorrow we'll tackle the rest of this. Is it in fact a case of Soros? And how do we analyze this part of the Brisa? All right. I don't want to tackle it now because we've only got 3 minutes left. Guys, wish you a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Kevin, well done. For thinking different answers.
Yeah.
Well done,
I've just sent a message. I want you to see if you understand what I just wrote, Damon.
Arthur, I wish you could have met Rabbi Tanzer.
Yeah.
Honestly.
There's a thing starting now, by the way, Damon. The tribute is starting now.
Okay, so let's go so we can go to the tribute.
Send me a link.
Okay.
Yeah,
let me send it to you. Yeah.